This game is just begging you slash forcing you as a raid leader, loot council, GM, anything that involves managing people for a set roster size. It's just begging you to create a tier list of all your friends and rub it in their faces with the decisions you make. Or at least that's probably how most people feel when it comes to situations like this. You're in a raid and you feel like you haven't gotten loot in a while. What's this mean that the leadership thinks about you? So you think like loot. It's kind of like maybe rate your top 5 favorite guys. They're getting the stuff first, or roster slots like who's going to be able to come to raid this time, who has to sit, or it could be class preferences like which players are allowed to play the stupid fucking classes. Mages, warlocks, pretty much anything with a mana bar that doesn't heal. Fuck me, why can't they make those classes do more DPS? Please, Blizzard. And maybe one of the less important ones, but that still matters, assignments. Like, who will be allowed to be the main tank? Who will be forced to be a second or a third tank and pick up random trash mobs, thereby destroying their ability to compete on overall damage? Which people have to kick? Which people are assigned to do polymorph? Who's going to be standing back to dispel the disorient on the core hounds? And which priests will dispel the mind control on Lucifron? These are all things that you have to make decisions on, and people are going to sometimes read into it. And I don't think it's crazy that people would, especially with stuff like loot. There's all these competing interests. You could be thinking about, maybe raid performance. Yeah, raid performance. That's the thing we should be really thinking of. Or maybe it's fairness. Do we spread all the loot around? Do we stacking one guy, especially when you have classes that scale more than linearly with their item statistics, such as warrior, giving all the loot to one person is usually the best, even if they're not the main tank. It'd be better to give all the loot to your highest DPS warriors than to spread it out evenly if you really cared about metrics. But that's not very fair. Maybe we should spread everything around evenly. Or this is an awful one, personalities. Maybe this has happened to you before in a guild. If you're a really, really, really agreeable person and you like to do stupid things like tell your GMs and raid leaders, oh, don't worry about me, I'm a chill guy, you can get taken advantage of so easily, even by people that really do care about you, because it's just you make it so easy for people to not stick their neck out for you if you're very agreeable. How unfair is that? Or if you're really unlucky, and thank God this isn't the case with me, but there could be cliques in your guild, and you might have to basically worry about certain groups of your members trying to unionize together to get something at the expense of the rest of the guild. I'm saying in the worst case. There's times where people should band together and be like, hey, officer man, are you being fucking stupid? And then there's other shit. Like maybe the person who should get loot is the guy who did a lot of pro-social behavior. I actually am super big on this. So for example, when it comes to legendary items, I don't give a fuck about math. My channel's like real big on math. I love numbers. When it comes to who's getting orange items, I don't give a tenth of a fuck about what makes sense math-wise. It's all about being a big figure in the community and really helping people out. But these things are all stuff that it competes with each other, and it can make making decisions really hard. And especially unless you're looking at something like raid performance, it's subjective. It's really biased, and it's just impossible to actually be completely fair about it. This could be an example that I know that I've had before. There are people in my guild that if they told me last minute that they had to miss a raid and they're sorry that they couldn't tell me sooner, I know from their work schedules that they do very, very, very important things, and the business that they work in actually sometimes demand their time on like 12-hour notice. And if one of these people were to tell me that they couldn't make raid, I would be much more likely to assume they're not bullshitting me than if somebody was in a position like myself where I don't have a job. I can play WoW as much as I want. And the only way I'd ever have a scheduling conflict is basically if I chose to have it. And there are people in my guild that are like this too. And if one of them told me they couldn't make raid, I would probably think about it for a few, not that much longer. I trust everybody, but I probably think about it longer than one of these dudes that I know has like a super demanding 80-hour a week job where they're like dealing with very large contracts between companies. But is that fair? Should everybody have the exact same rules? Does everybody having the exact same rules make sense? it's awful having these different things to need to decide over all the time. Like the biggest problem I have right now in my group, nobody's mean, everybody's nice. I like everyone in my guild. I think they all like me. And I have to decide who's going to sit each week because I was trying to take it slow with the roster and have an awesome composition of classes and have, like a 43, 44 man roster. But this stuff came out during the holidays and a lot of people had chaotic schedules. And then I wanted to get more people in the raid group and finally get us all full. So, I'm thinking like, oh, we can have a couple more mages, a couple more warlocks. Like, I guess we can have 2 hunters, stuff like that. And it's really not great for the comp, but it was very handy to get the raid full. We're going 4 weeks. We have like our MC clears. And then finally this last week we had a full 40 people showed up. And the reason that happened is because I really kicked it into overdrive with the recruiting and helping people get from 50 to 60. But in the process of doing that, I made the roster go from like 43, 44 people, which was routinely underfilling the raid by a couple people, to now we got like 50. And I'm going to have to sit probably like 5 to 8 people on an average week. Now the holidays are gone, and that's going to suck. And it's got me wondering things like, well, you could sit based on raid performance. You could tell people it's the blue bar Holocaust. You motherfuckers, if you don't have energy or rage, you're sitting if you don't heal. That would probably be the best for raid performance. I'm not really all about that though. Like I don't want people kind of pitted against each other and competing for their slots. I want people to be like self-motivated to perform well because they have self-respect and they care about the team's success. But I don't want people wondering like, oh, is helping this guy out going to maybe bite me? But just doing it straight fair and having everybody take their turn sitting, I don't really know if that makes any sense either. Because not everybody, for example, puts in the same amount of work in my guild. Everybody puts in a lot. They all get their world buffs and they all get their consumes and they all flask, but still, there are guys who they're going to farm Iron Foe. Or like, I don't even know if Felstrike really makes any sense to farm, honestly. I haven't done the math on it, but they're intending on farming shit like that. And there's other people who want to take it more chill. So it's like, is it actually fair to have the people who invest more time in the game sit an equal amount of time? Like, I don't know. And this isn't a consideration really for me because it's not a problem, but in a lot of guilds there's different personalities, and this can be a thing you get confronted with all the time that you can fuck up as a leadership person. You'll have these hyper agreeable individuals that have a lot of empathy and they can identify with the problems you're having with managing the guild. And so this is a thing that I've had a few of you motherfuckers message me about if you're in the guild and watching this. Oh, hey, it's not a big deal if you need to like sit me to like help make a spot for someone else. Like, you just get me in whenever. And I've told them all the same thing. Like, you need to stop fucking telling people that because a lot of people will take advantage of your kindness because it's easy. Somebody doesn't even have to be a bad person to do that. It would be so easy for me to just go sit the 4 most agreeable people in my raid group and kick the can down the road one more week before I have to make a real decision on like, how am I going to find out who to sit? It's awful that people get abused by being agreeable, and it happens all the fucking time. Or who hasn't been in a guild before where there's someone who's just a real fucking whiny bitch and they get their way because it's just easy on leadership to just fold. Oh my god, that sucks. Or if you're really unlucky, but this is in a lot of guilds, there's cliques. There's toxic cliques where like people will they'll like shit talk other members together in a way that's inappropriate. Like I wouldn't mind it, for example, if I found out like 3 dudes in the guild had like become good friends and they had like a Discord that they hung out in sometimes, and I fucked something up in raid and they're like, I can't believe Jake did that. That was so fucking retarded, man. Like that wouldn't bug me at all. That's no big deal. But you know what I mean when I say there can be toxic cliques in a guild. Or when it comes to rostering, you could also just give the nice guys roster slots over other people. That's another thing. So it's like raid performance, fairness, personalities, clicks, and reward for being a real nice guy, real chill dude. But none of these are super obvious as to how you should make your decisions. And it keeps on going on with other things in the game too. Like, who are you going to let play the mana bar classes? Like, if you're going to make I'm making another raid and people want to play alts, and a lot of people like playing alts that aren't like warrior, priest, paladin, because a lot of people don't like healing, and a lot of people hate how if you're a warrior you just get molested out in the open world kind of forever. but I can't let everybody be something stupid, you know? Like, I can have like 1 or 2 hunters. I intend on having very, very few mages or warlocks because I want to be able to easily bounce the mages and warlocks around between the groups and not have to worry about fucking up the comp in either of them. I want all the raids to have pretty damn good comps. I don't want to have like one raid of dog shit comps. That way the other one can do better. But it's difficult to manage, you know, like who will you let be a hunter? Who will you let be a warlock or a mage? They're not as good. Who's going to be able to be a druid? You really don't want to have multiple. I currently have 2 druids. Fucking shoot me in the head, dude. They're both great players and I fucking love them. But man, having shit like that in the raid comp, it's like you're thinking things like, okay, if let's go crazy. Let's have the blue bar Holocaust. We're going to only take healers and people with rage bars in raid. We'll have 1 warlock and 1 druid because they make the bosses less armored. That's what a lot of guilds do. That makes me personally uncomfortable, so it's not an easy decision. I'm probably never going to do anything like that. Or this even extends to making other decisions that this might sound like pretty simple if you've never done it before, but assignments in raid. Here's something, if you take doing your best in raid seriously, you will have noticed. Being assigned to be like the 3rd tank or the 4th tank on a couple trash packs in a run will make it nearly impossible for you to get number 1 overall damage in a run, because it's going to require you to like usually go D-stance and to focus on positioning and move the mobs around. And in the process of like, why do mobs follow you? Generally, mobs follow you because you get out of melee range, which makes you lose uptime. Duh. So like if you're tanking, even if it's just a couple trash packs, this is something you have to give up. But it's weird, right? Because who do you want to be doing the important things? Like often it's like players of really deep knowledge of the game that are like super like tuned in and pay attention. And a lot of those guys do a lot of DPS and really identify with their DPS. But then you as the decision maker are incentivized to fuck their plans up. Awful, awful stuff. Can also be this with like pull hunters. Which warlocks are going to get to do which curses. Like, for example, if you had a warlock that was really serious about parsing, they would probably want to be the one that does Curse of Shadows because they have more control over their parse being good then. For example, if you, and this can be a thing, this isn't with a case with Arlocks, but like this is a thing that happens. Warlocks will run into a fight, like on a boss, and they'll click Curse of Wreck or Curse of Elements or Shadows one time and then instantly go to casting Shadow Bolt. And if they get a resist on that curse, they just won't put it up because they'll just have trained themselves that that's acceptable, that like that's good raid performance, that that's okay. And so, you know, if you're a warlock and you're really into doing as much damage as possible and there are other warlocks with the other curses, you would pretty reasonably be like, hey, could I do Curse of Shadows, Mr. Raid Leader Man? Pretty please, because then I'm sure it's going to be up. Right? But what's weird is the raid leader might be like, you're really serious at the game, so I know you'll do a really good job keeping Curse of Wreck up, so do that instead. Perverse incentives where caring more gives you less authority in raid and gets you forced to do things that aren't as fun. And this happens, I think, in most guilds. I think in most guilds, people running them, they have a hard enough time fighting the roster boss that they have this rather logical empathy fatigue. And even the people that they like raiding with a lot, they see them slightly as numbers. And they start doing things that the lizard brain likes. That'd be all the people who tell you it's okay if you sit them, even if you think it doesn't make sense for the raid group. It's just so easy. Just sit those people. And then you get to dodge hard conversations with other people. Oh, the guys who say that, you know, loot's not a big deal to them, just never give them loot. Oh, the people who bitch about loot all the time, give them all the loot. Oh, the people who say they don't want to come to raid unless they're able to do X, Y, or Z. Yeah, like, you know, fold to their demands because it's easier for you as the decision maker. This is there's nothing I really think Blizzard could do to fix any of this. If they made it so you could take 45 people into raid instead of 40, and the idea was like, look, now you guys can have 45-man rosters and you'll have at least 40 people every week. We'll leave the raids just as hard as they are normally. You know what would happen? I think that unless Warcraft logs said you're only allowed to take 40 people into a raid and have account for the logs, people would just start doing 45-man raids. In very short order, that's what would happen. We'd be back to square one. Now, they could potentially up the amount of loot that drops in this fresh, and I think, although I'm pretty big on the no changes stuff because I really don't trust Blizzard to make changes that make any fucking sense, I do think dropping more loot would be nice. Then you wouldn't have to create an implied tier list of how you think people are deserving or something. I mean, like, there's obviously you're making a value judgment if you run a loot council and you give people loot. So in some respect, every time you assign loot, it's like you're picking who's the S tier person to receive this item. And back to the roster shit. Every time you bench someone, in some sense, you're saying that like they are the person that makes the least sense to be in the raid to you. And it could even be something that's like really like not like weird at all. It could be like, oh, everyone's gonna sit an equal amount of times, and now it's just your turn. And since it's your turn, it makes the least sense to have you in raid because it's your turn, which means it makes sense for you to take a turn sitting. But all reasons that like are not that one very quickly devolve into some form of you're raiding people, and it sucks. It's the only thing that stresses me out about my guild at all. And no one complains about this shit to me. No one complains about loot. No one complains about having to. I mean, I haven't really had to sit people too much, except last week. But it's awful. I do not like having to pick between my friends or just become a total psycho and make it all about raid performance. Which, hey, if that's how you manage your group, nothing wrong with that. I bet that everybody in your group's a part of that vision and they like it, but that's not how I advertise my guild. That's not how my guild's going to be, and I wouldn't be comfortable running a group like that. Not because it's immoral or anything, but just it doesn't agree with my personality. If any of this stuff sounds relatable to you, you probably ran a guild before, and it was probably really fucking stressful. If you ever want to give that shit up and join a guild, I need people on 9 p.m. Eastern. I'm not sure Wednesday or Thursday yet. I need to get like another 20 people before like I have a second group, and it's gonna take me a little bit because I don't intend on making a B team. I want it to be a group that's just as good as the one I have, and it's Saturday 2 p.m. Eastern. So yeah, if you're on Night Slayer, Alliance, NA, you don't have to live in North America, but you do have to play at our times. Hit me up in Discord. I'd love to talk to you about a lot of things, not just WoW. Peace, guys.